So continuing our playoff coverage of Wildcard Weekend, today we are talking Dolphins versus Chiefs. If you want to see my breakdowns of any other of the matchups, there's going to be a link in the description to the playoff playlist. We've already done 3 matchups. We're going to continue throughout the week to get every Wildcard matchup covered. But like I said, today we're doing Dolphins versus Chiefs. A quick overview for these teams. The Dolphins had one of the most exciting seasons, I think. They had one of the best offenses in the NFL with Tyreek Hill. Had he not gotten injured and been banged up in the later part of the year, I think he would have cracked the 2,000-yard mark. Of course, Tua had probably the best, not probably, Tua had the best year of his career, even got some MVP buzz. However, the Dolphins only beat one team this year above 500. That was the Dallas Cowboys. And they also have some concerns like we're going to talk about throughout this video. Mainly their injuries to their defense is kind of decimated. As for the Chiefs, this is probably the, I don't know if worst is the right word, but it's definitely like the most underdog they've kind of felt heading into the playoffs in the Mahomes era. Because I think many people would be surprised to see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And years prior, that was like unheard of. You know, last year, the year prior to that, before that, they were always considered one of the favorites heading into the playoffs. Now, I haven't looked at the odds, but the Chiefs, they've had a really weird year. You know, Mahomes statistically hasn't had this bad of a year since 2019, which ironically enough was the year the Chiefs won their first Super Bowl. And we're going to talk about some of their issues throughout this video, but it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think the biggest part of this, and I can't quantify this with the breakdown, is the weather. I think the weather is going to be a massive element to this game because it's said to be, it's going to be below freezing during this game. So this is going to definitely be out in the elements. But let's get into the personnel breakdown. So we have a lot of really good coaching matchups going into Wildcard Weekend. We're seeing Mike McCarthy play his old team. We're seeing McVay and Campbell. I consider 2 top 10 coaches going at it in that matchup. For this one, this might be the best coaching matchup of Wildcard Weekend. Having 2 guys considered offensive masterminds. If you watched my video where I ranked every head coach in the NFL, both these guys were in my top 5. So I consider this an elite matchup. However, I'm going to give the advantage to Andy Reid here. As much as I like Mike McDaniel, he's only in his 2nd year as a head coach. He's only but he's only coached 1 playoff game in his career. So I think as much as I like him, it would be foolish to put him over Andy Reid, who has 2 Super Bowl rings and is widely regarded as the best head coach in the NFL. Now for the quarterback matchup, we have Tua Tagovailoa versus Patrick Mahomes. So I have been a massive supporter of Tua on this channel throughout his entire career. This year, I put him on my Players of the Week list countless times. However, I'm still taking Patrick Mahomes in this. I know he's had a weird year. Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, though, is still the best player in the world. I put out a poll recently where I said, is Patrick Mahomes, do you still consider him the best quarterback in the NFL? And I think like 80% of you guys said no. So I get it. I get he's had a down year. There are, you look at the stats here. Tua does look like he had a more impressive season, but situationally, I just trust Mahomes more. They're at home. It's going to be in that freezing temperature. I don't know what to expect from Tua in that environment. So I'm going to go with Mahomes here. And now for the wide receiver and tight end matchup. For the Miami Dolphins, we have the best 1-2 punch in the NFL at the wide receiver position. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both cracking 1,000 yards. We obviously talked about how great Tyreek was this season. I think he's my favorite for Offensive Player of the Year. To go with that, Cedric Wilson and Durham Smythe at the tight end position. Comparing that to the Chiefs, Rashee Rice, Justin Watson, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and Travis Kelce. So I think this is probably the biggest advantage in this game that one team has over another. The Miami Dolphins clearly have a far better and more capable wide receiver core. And when you talk about that weather element, like Tyreek Hill is no stranger to Arrowhead and freezing temperatures. If the Dolphins are to win this game, they're going to need a massive game from Tyreek Hill, especially with Jalen Waddle questionable. It's looking like he's going to play, but we know Jalen Waddle has been banged up. And for the Chiefs, this has been the worst receiving core Patrick Mahomes has had as a starter in Kansas City. And I definitely think Travis Kelce has exited his prime, not cracking 1,000 yards this year. He just doesn't look like he has the same juice that he once had. You know, it looks like he definitely lost a step. I think that is a separate video that needs to be made on its own. And I've talked about this in other videos. Like, I wouldn't be too surprised if this was Travis Kelce's final season. People forget he's the same age as Rob Gronkowski. So with all that being said, I think the Dolphins, even if Jalen Waddle doesn't play, just having Tyreek Hill is an absolute game changer. The Dolphins get the advantage. And for the running back matchup, we have the Dolphins duo of Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane versus the Chiefs duo of Isaiah Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Another matchup that I think does favor the Dolphins. Raheem Mostert, I think, is one of the most underrated running backs in the NFL, having an insane 18 touchdowns on the season. I didn't check, but it's either him or McCaffrey has to have the most rushing touchdowns from a running back this year. 18 is mind-blowing. He did make the Pro Bowl this year, and Achane did deal with some injuries, but as a rookie, having 800 yards and missing the significant amount of time that he did is extremely impressive. We know how great he was in that Broncos game, of course. I do like Isaiah Pacheco a lot. I think he is one of the most consistent players on the Chiefs offense, especially outside of Mahomes. With Kelce kind of taking a step back this year, you could argue Pacheco is the second best player on the Chiefs offense, especially this season. But like I said, just the 1-2 punch of the Dolphins guys is just too much. And for offensive line, I think this advantage does go to the Chiefs. They've been consistently one of the top 10 offensive lines the past couple of years. The Dolphins, for me, they only really have one standout player on that line, and it is Teron Armstead, who is actually questionable for this game, so that obviously is not great. But I just think overall the Chiefs line having that consistency and the high-end talent, I think, just favors them over the Dolphins. Now we flip over to defense, starting with the defensive line. The Miami Dolphins run a 3-4. Their defensive line consists of Christian Wilkins, Raekwon Davis, and Zach Saylor. The Chiefs' defensive line, they're running a 4-3 with George Karlaftis, Derek Nottie, Chris Jones, Mike Dana. So you look at the sack production from the Chiefs is just insurmountable. I mean, two of their guys individually had 10.5 sacks. Karlaftis and Jones both putting that up. I think that this one is a clear advantage for the Chiefs. And for the linebacker position, this is where you really start to see the glaring issue with the Dolphins and their key injuries to Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. Their two best pass rushers in that linebacker unit. Them being gone is a glaring hole for this team. And playing a guy like Melvin Ingram, who I like Melvin Ingram, but I think he's way past being a starting linebacker in the NFL, especially in a playoff game. Let's just take a look at their unit as a whole. Emmanuel Ogbah, David Long Jr., Duke Riley, like we said, Melvin Ingram. They put up a combined 8.5 sacks, 107 solo tackles. Compare that to the Chiefs linebacker core of Willie Gay, Nick Bolton, and Drew Tranquill. 5.5 sacks, 157 solo tackles. So, it would just be kind of a major indictment on the Chiefs if I didn't take their linebackers, just given the fact that Dolphins' two best guys are injured here. So the Chiefs get the linebacker advantage here. Now taking a look at the secondary. So if the Dolphins unit was healthy here, I would definitely take them in this matchup. I love their personnel in the secondary. However, all their guys in their secondary are literally questionable to play in this game. And especially Xavier Howard is doubtful to play in this game. But I love, on paper, these names. This was one of the reasons why I was so excited for the Dolphins, is because I thought they were going to have a really elite secondary. And in certain games, they did look really good. Xavier Howard, Deshaun Elliott, Javon Holland, and Jalen Ramsey, as a unit, put up 6 interceptions, 28 combined pass defenses, and 159 combined solo tackles. Comparing that to the Chiefs secondary, who's fully healthy, L'Jarius Sneed, Justin Reed, Mike Edwards, and Trent McDuffie with a combined 4 interceptions, 33 pass defenses, and 226 solo tackles. So the Chiefs, like we said earlier, they've had kind of a down year, especially on offense, but the defense has really been the rock of the Chiefs team. That has really been the thing that's kept them in the games, and I think it's going to be a crucial part if they do go on a playoff run. They're really going to have to rely on their defense, and I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong, but this might be the first Wildcard breakdown video where one team has swept on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that just highlights two things. Like we just said, the Chiefs, they really rely on their defense this year. And number two, the Dolphins have way too many crucial injuries at literally the worst time entering the playoffs. So the Chiefs, they get the advantage for secondary and defense as a whole. So my official prediction is the Chiefs will win this game, and it comes down to 3 major points. Number 1 is anytime you have the coaching and quarterback matchup advantage, you should win the game. The Chiefs have that, as we just talked about. My second point is the Dolphins' key injuries on their defense, and they have some banged-up injuries on their offense as well, like Jalen Waddle. And the third point is the weather. The weather is going to be brutal. Like we said, below freezing. The Chiefs are used to playing in that, and I just don't know what to expect from Tua and the Dolphins in those elements. But that has been my predictions for this game, the breakdown. You let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe.